Hello, everybody, and this is CJ from American Running Company. I mentioned on our Facebook page last night that we're going to be doing this four-part series, very interesting series with Neurosomatic Therapist Randy Clark today from Clearwater at the Icon Center. This is going to be a fun series, very educational, so everybody get ready for a fun ride. Welcome, Randy.
Oh, thank you, CJ.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit what you do.
So, neurosomatic therapy, that's something that most people may not be familiar with. What it really is your neurosomatic therapist is a structural expert. They really understand how the body's put together, top to bottom, right? And then after we evaluate that structure and see how it opposes gravity and where the problems might be, we use soft tissue manipulation. So either that is massage, whether that's stretching, strengthening, whatever needs to be done for that person in order to get them back in the right spot so that when they move better.
Nice, very nice. How did you come about doing this?
Well, long story.
Yep.
So neurosomatic therapy actually started from a guy named Paul St. John. Paul St. John was a Vietnam veteran. In Vietnam, he got shot down in a helicopter. He was doing a reconnaissance mission. The missile went through, shot down his helicopter. When he landed, he was paralyzed from the waist down when he crashed. Not landed, but crashed.
Wow.
He was, right. And they were able to haul him back to the military base. And as he was starting to improve, he was just not, he kind of hit a threshold where he just wasn't getting any better. And so because he was in reconnaissance, he had some local guides, and his local guides took him to a local medicine man there in Vietnam. And long story there, but he was able to relieve the symptoms and nobody else was at the base.
Wow.
And so Paul kind of got interested in this, but he said kind of went in the back of his mind. He did another tour of duty. He came back 3 weeks after coming back from Vietnam. He gets T-boned at an intersection, breaks his neck.
Wow.
And so at that point, he went to the VA. He said all his old pain symptoms came back from the car accident. He went there. They did everything they could do. One day they sent him to a psychologist who said, "You're just going to have to live with your pain. You're not ever going to get any better." He was 28. He was 28 years old, and they're like, "You're going to live in chronic pain the rest of your life." And he decided that he wasn't okay with that. He also was a medic in the Green Berets, so he had a little bit of medical training. And so he said, I left that appointment at the VA and walked over to the medical school library and just started researching. And he ran into a couple of books, and he's like, there's my pain pattern right there. And he noticed what he was seeing were these things that you see behind you, these trigger point patterns.
Oh, yeah.
And they were mimicking what his pain was. And so he actually found them on himself and was self-treating in order to get rid of some of these pains. And from that kind of grew this whole industry. Started neuromuscular therapy, which then turned into neurosomatic therapy over the years.
Wow, that's an interesting story. Defying the odds.
Yes, yeah. Today he's in his mid-70s and is very active and in no pain, and has been like he's in way better shape at 75 than he was at 28.
And stories like this, our audience likes hearing because we have runners that come in the store in their 70s and they don't know when it's going to end for them, and you hear stories like this. And
he's still going real strong.
Wow. And how long have you been doing this in the Clearwater?
In the Clearwater area, he started it. He was my teacher, so he started it before me. He's been in the St. Pete Clearwater area about 40 years.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing about 22.
Wow. What injuries can neurosomatic therapy help with for my runners viewing today?
Okay, so runner injuries, like the traumas, right? We're going to break down kind of runner injuries into 3 categories. They're going to be traumas, they're going to be structural issues, and they're going to be overuse, misuse problems. And so trauma-wise, which is kind of what we're going to focus on today, the big traumas that we see with our runners are ankle sprains and knee sprains. And those can be, you misstep, you do there's all sorts of reasons why you do it. You can tear a meniscus. There's all sorts of issues that can come along with that. But those are, with runners in general, those are the 2 big ones that we see.
Yep, and we see that in the store too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time. What type of traumas are more common in runners, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, those 2, those are the big ones. And then, so what we would do with someone like that, of course, is...
What's the process?
The first 48 hours is acute care, right? Acute care, so that's the typical RICE, the rest, ice, compress, elevate. That, that goes for any trauma like that. Where we really come in is in the rehab after.
Yep.
right? And so I want to get back to running, but man, this ankle keeps bugging me, and every time I run, it just bothers me again. Those are the people that we can help, because we're going to find there's tissues around the ankle called retinacular tissues that can get overstretched and strained, and they have a really poor blood supply. Those particular tissues don't have very good blood supply, so they can take a real long time to heal. Yeah. So what we can do is help with the blood supply to those tissues, really get them better, faster, and get them back out running again.
And I tell the runners that come in the store too, if you're dealing with an injury, don't try to run through it. I mean, that's going to make matters worse. I mean, listen to Randy. I mean, it's not a good thing to do to try to run through injuries.
No, because it's just going to keep coming back.
Yeah,
it's just going to keep coming back, and eventually, and you hear those people, oh, I used to be a runner, but now I can't do it anymore, and it's just because they didn't get good treatment.
Yeah,
it isn't because their trauma is so unique. It's just that they didn't recover from it properly.
Yeah, and I know we're all competitive, but listen to your body. I mean,
that's great advice.
That's great advice. I tell people all the time. Is there any suggestions you would take for runners to avoid any injuries?
Sure. I mean, certainly proper footwear is that's a great place to start. The other things that we're going to look at, and I guess we're going to talk about in the second part a little bit more, is understand your structure. Understand where your issues are and get that looked at before you get injured is really the thing. Most of the time, these injuries are not from one incident. They're from doing something wrong repetitively that eventually turns into a trauma.
Yeah.
Right? Why did I sprain my right ankle and not my left ankle? Right? Is a good question, is because, you did something different with that foot than you did with the other foot.
Yeah.
And that repetitive use and misuse ended up setting it up for an injury. Because we've all done it. We've all twisted our ankle or done something like that. But sometimes you twist your ankle and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes you twist your ankle and you're down for 3 weeks. Right? And it's because that ankle already had some underlying issue going on. Yeah. And especially if you are repeatedly doing one side, it's always my right knee that hurts. It's always my right ankle that rolls over. There's something underneath there, and that those structural issues is something we're going to talk about in the next segment.
It has nothing to do with someone being left-handed or anything, having more effect on one side. I've heard
not really, and we'll, like I said, we'll delve into that a little bit in the next one. But there's some really interesting stuff we found in the structural side that I think your audience will be very happy to hear.
Well, to hear for part one with Randy, I mean, this is just the beginning. As we get into this, it's just going to get better and better. I mean, this is a good segment if you want to get educated today. So everybody join us for part two. ARC CJ here with Randy Clark.
Thanks, CJ.
Thank you.